said, James Watling, representing Team Alpha. We're here in the studio in the centre of Newcastle, bringing to you some up-to-date combat news. We also have our usual new syntax section, where we'll be discussing things such as art, syntax. So that's just given us another 2,000 subscribers right there. Sex tax section. We'll be discussing art, science, film, music, nutrition, streetwear, clothing, and various different topics. We'll also have a fairly new section. We've had this once before on the show, which is the phone-in section. We don't have any guests in the studio tonight, unfortunately, but we are expecting a couple of special guests to so to speak, to phone in tonight. We'll be discussing some boxing, some mixed martial arts tonight. On the syntax, we're going to be looking at film. One specific film that I'm quite excited to talk about, a documentary which will be coming up later on in the show. And we also have our newish-ish section, our usual slot with Ridley Scott. Thank you. So the slot with Ridley Scott. So we'll have Ridley Scott, not in the studio tonight, unfortunately, but we'll be discussing some of the some things relevant to Ridley Scott. Get the podcast going on there, no problem.
Hi, if you've just joined the podcast.
If you've just joined the podcast, we've just switched you on there. You missed the introduction. So, as I say, this is Peep Live, where we're based in the centre of Newcastle, covering combat sports, covering various different things such as art, music, science, film, media, street life, clothing, etc. So, that's the rundown tonight. I should also say we're running a little bit late, but that's not a problem. So I hope you guys are tuned in and ready to enjoy your monthly or bi-weekly section of Peep. I should also shout out to our usual listener, one of our most dedicated listeners, Mr. Baz Jones from the Manor Gym. So thank you for listening, Baz. You and your lovely girlfriend, you'll be listening before you head off to work. We're hoping to get Baz to do a phone-in, actually, or perhaps as a guest, but he didn't seem too keen as a guest. So what I thought we'd do, and Cliff Sainsbury's my co-conspirator and CEO of Peep Limited, what I thought we could do is perhaps surprise Baz by doing a mobile show. And what we could do is on his way out of the house into his car on the way to work, we could maybe hold the show from the back of his car and maybe film a live show then if you thought that would work. So that was one proposal that I had. So thanks for joining us tonight, Baz. You can also actually catch some of our more recent out of the studio efforts on Syntax. We visited Barter Books, the one and only Barter Books in Alnwick, a couple of weeks ago. So you can find that on the thumbnails, on the Peep thumbnails. We also visited the Elite Fitness Gym, Ollie Dial's Elite Fitness Gym in Alnwick, which is also where Team Alpha is currently based. We had a chat with Ollie. We discussed about the new gym, the facilities. Fantastic. You can find them I believe on Facebook under Elite Fitness. Elite Fitness Super Gym on Facebook. On Instagram, Elite Fitness Super Gym Alnwick on Instagram. Fully equipped free weight section, machines, cardiovascular, a mixed martial arts section as well, a new fitness training studio that's about to be launched, outdoor training area. So if you live in Alnwick or anywhere near and you want to get in shape, you want to learn martial arts or resistance, you want strength and conditioning, you want to lose weight, gain weight, get in shape, look like an X-Man, then that's the place to visit. So if you go, as I say, on Facebook, Elite Fitness Super Gym, either through Facebook or Instagram, get some of the details or contact us here in the studio, and we'd be more than happy to point you in the right direction. So let's have a look then. So we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of it. I've got a few more things on the desk tonight because we've got a phone in, just throwing me off here. Also, if you're not presently a subscriber, if you'd like to hit that subscribe button, hit the notification button. You can, as I say, follow us for your up-to-date combat news. If you go on to Peep right now, you can see some fantastic footage. It's particularly on Lewis Ritson on the Blood Boys. Lewis Ritson's an upcoming star in the Northeast in professional boxing. You can also find myself at Watling Hot on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook under James Watling, I believe, and on Instagram, which is my main kind of base, so to speak, on Team Alpha 1424. it up.
Also got
Throw the graphics up.
the graphics up.
It's all about the graphics. Hey, listen, I think our last show was one of the best shows that we've done because I think we were so on point. It was actually really interesting to talk about the Terror, the newish Ridley Scott. Was it HBO? Is it not HBO?
BT Sport. BT.
Was it BT? Is it on BT? BT Live. I'm trying.
BT TV.
BTTV, that's right. It was interesting about the Terror last week, and tonight we'll be talking about one of. It's actually a newish section of a section called Ridley Rewind, which is part of our usual slot with Ridley Scott. We'll be talking about one of his great films that he's brought to us. So many great films to choose from. So we're not going to review it because it's an old movie, over 10 years old. But we're going to talk a little bit about it and some interesting facts. So without further ado, we're going to get into combat news as I scroll down my iPad. So we're going to talk a little bit. I should also mention we're partnered tonight with Spennymoor Sports. If you remember on the last episode, I'm zigzagging tonight. On the last episode, they partnered with us and they actually gave us a fantastic pair of gloves to give away in a competition. I think the competition was to do with naming the protagonist on a new shark movie, and the answer for that was Meg, I believe. Or was it your top 3 shark movies? I can't remember. Mr. Chris Reed, he won that and the gloves were sent off to him. So thank you very much to Spennymoor Sports for sending us those gloves and being our partner. And you can go on to Spennymoor Sports. They specialize in combat equipment and combat wear, and I'm sure anything that you require, it's certainly worth checking those guys out on www.spennymoorsports.com. Combat news, I keep saying combat news, so I think what we'll do is we'll touch onto combat news, but first we're going to do the competition. We're going to do competition time. And we have a graphic. We're the house of graphics. We have a graphic for just about everything. So competition. We're going to throw this down now, and it's an interactive competition. So you, the viewer, expected to basically write some kind of answer on the feed, on the YouTube feed, preferably, possibly on the Twitter. Can we do Twitter feed? Let's go YouTube. YouTube, yes. YouTube comment section, but you can go on Twitter.
YouTube.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to be looking at them all, the Facebook page as well. So
brilliant. So you can go on the Facebook page, you can go on Twitter, any way you can access us and give us the answer to this this question. So the winner will get a official. Do we have the prize? What's the hand?
The white T-shirt. We've got one. But black.
Brilliant. Okay, so we've got a black Peep limited T-shirt. Suitable for all occasions. We actually saw the Hellraiser Steve Ibbotson, who's fighting soon on. Is it the Wolfpack? The Wolfpack show. We're going to talk a little bit. We'll give you more information on that as it comes up because we're still about 10 weeks out of the show. But Steve Ibbotson, one of the Northeast and the UK's and the Europe's and the world's premier fighters, was seen wearing a Peep Live T-shirt whilst he was training. So you can train in it. You could go out and rock it in a pair of jeans or slacks or whatever you want to wear. You could wear it for a night out. You could wear it to the opera, perhaps, Cliff. You have our permission to wear it anywhere you would like to. So, and it's a large size. So if you're anywhere between, the age of, 10 and 100, then it may well fit you. So here is the question. Can you name Peep's number 1 crossover fight? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to count down a list, and in future episodes, we're going to actually discuss these fights in more detail. We don't have time to go through them all in one show, but I would like you to name. It's almost like what is the crossover fight missing from this list? Now, these can be either fictional or factual. There can be fictional characters or obviously real people that have actually fought. And we're going to give you a countdown, and would like you to name what we've decided is our top crossover fight. So in number 10, we have Trevor Berbick versus Nobukio Takado. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Number 9, Randy Couture versus James Toney. And obviously we'll break these down, as I say, in further shows. Butterbean versus Genko Sudo. Hoist Gracie versus Art Jimison. If you remember back in the days of, I think it was UFC number 1, wasn't it? It was Art Jimison, a boxer, against Hoist Gracie, obviously the legendary Hoist Gracie, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu master. Tim Sylvia versus Ray Mercer. Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm, which we appreciate was a sanctioned MMA bout on a UFC card, but we're kind of looking at Holly Holm as, a kickboxer against, in a sense, a judo player. Conor Mayweather, obviously, versus Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor, which I believe, and I don't have any data in front of me to verify this, but I believe I think we can pretty much all agree, the highest grossing crossover fight in history. Bob Sapp versus Mirko Cro Cop. That would have been interesting. I'm going to ask a question about that in a minute, actually. Muhammad Ali versus Antonio Inoki. And they're our top 9. And there's number 1, which is our top crossover fight of all time. Can you guess it? If you guess the number 1 crossover fight on our list, then you will win the Peep Live t-shirt. But I will give you a clue and say that it can be factual or fictional. So we can have fictional characters as part of this. It doesn't have to be real fighters. And that's a bit of a clue to try and guide you in the right direction.
Massive clue, James.
It's a big clue, but we are also, apart from graphics, we also like to do clues. So we provide both. Of those, I'm not going to break those fights down because what we'll possibly look to do is perhaps 2 of those crossover fights per episode because it'll take us a time to get through them all. But I will ask a question. The Bob Sapp versus Mirko Cro Cop. Did you watch that one, Cliff? I'd like to know the result of that, actually. I mean, I would have gone with Cro Cop, but it depends which Cro Cop we're talking. Are we talking about a Cro Cop 2005, a Cro Cop 2015? You may be struggling. It's worth checking out, yeah. So while we're checking it out, we're going to get on to our combat news. So we're going to talk a little bit on Vasily Lomachenko. He fought reasonably recently. He fought for the WBA lightweight belt, I believe, against Georges Linares. Georges Linares, I believe, was the belt holder at the time. It was so Lomachenko was obviously fighting to. Yep.
Mirko Crop chops down big old Bob Sapp.
I thought probably was it a left head kick to the head?
It was probably a karate chop to the
right. I think it was Cro Cop who coined the phrase. I believe, was it right leg hospital, left leg cemetery or something like that. I think it was. So Lomachenko fought Linares for the WBA lightweight belt. Linares, a fantastic fighter, recently moved to London with his team. His record stands at 44 wins and 4 losses, a lovely record with 27 KOs. For the weight division, a tall, lean but muscular and very, very strong fighter. Just a very well-rounded boxer. I've not seen, in quite honesty, I think I've seen one of his other fights, Georges, one of his other fights, but he's strong, great boxer, and very compact as well, and seems to do everything right. Lomachenko, Cliff, he held or holds an amateur record of 390, legendary amateur record of 396 wins with only 1 defeat as an amateur, and of his 1 defeat, he avenged that loss twice, which is I don't think anybody can top that amateur record. De La Hoya's amateur record actually is underestimated. I'm just wondering if this is the. We can try.
We've got a call.
We have a call. We're going to find out who it is. Hello? Hello? No problem. Hello? No, we don't seem to be. Let's see if we get a link.
We'll just have to come back to that one, James.
Hello?
Hello there, it's Chris. How you doing?
Chris, how are you doing?
I'm alright. What's happening?
Good to hear from you. We're struggling with a speaker system here. We're trying to get this thing together. Thank you for calling. We're going to try and get this linked up. Hang on.
Yeah, he needs to put his phone on loudspeaker.
Chris, could you put your phone on loudspeaker, please?
Yeah, hold on.
Thank you, man.
And turn it up. Turn his phone up.
Yep. They're on speaker. I'm just trying to get some kind of. It's technical hitch in the studio. Technical hitch.
Is his not coming through?
It's not coming through onto the. Sorry about this, Chris and viewers at home. I do apologise. We're just gonna have to get our technical guy to come in and just try and sort this out. All good. That's good. Well, thanks for calling in. How's things? How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Very good. Just trying to hold the show together. We had a few little technical hitches at the start and in the middle as well. So there we go. Brilliant. So we're just trying to keep everything together. So thanks for taking the time to call in. I was trying to get you on as another guest because we had a lot of hits a lot of likes on the a lot of views on the last show that we did together. Brilliant. Chris, could you just say a few words for us? Because I think we might be get it.
Yeah, of course I am. I'm really honoured to be given the opportunity to call in again. It's great to have a chat with you guys. Hopefully I can win another prize today as well.
I don't know if you'd watched the show earlier on, but we're talking about how you'd won the gloves that were given to us by Spending More Sports on the last episode. But we had a little bit of trouble with the answer, didn't we? Because we had to go back to the well for that a few times because I think I was being quite specific with the type of shark or something that you had to answer as the as a question.
I feel like you were trying to hinder my chance of winning. I'm a winning kind of guy.
That's it. There's no quitting. You just had to keep going. I was trying to really go by the rules, so I didn't have to. Didn't want the viewers at home to think just because you've been a guest in the past that that we were going to favour you. But yeah, brilliant. So all good. So the first question I wanted to ask you was, since you were on as our guest, I believe it was in the earlier this year. I think it was it early January, February this year. So I'm just wondering, what have you been doing with your journey since we last saw you? What have you been doing? Anything specific been happening with you?
Yeah, just really trying to hold myself together. I was struggling with a knee injury for a period of time, and I had a small operation just to trim my meniscus. And since then, I have seen a private doctor because I've been unable to recover fully from it. And I've got a torn ACL, a partially torn ACL, meniscus issues still. I've got a torn femoral cartilage, and I've got a Baker's cyst on my knee. So I'm really just going to chop that off and become a pirate.
That seems to be just to jump in quickly, Chris, because some of the viewers might have missed to start the conversation. So we have Mr. Chris Reed, who's just called us now, our first call-in guest. Chris had been on with us on an earlier show. Chris specializes in jiu-jitsu, training. He's been training now for a number of years. He's a blue belt in power kickboxing, a blue belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He's also a psychiatric care nurse as well. He has his own podcast called The Chris Reed Show, which is trending, I believe, in the top. Was it the top 10 on was it Apple? On iTunes, sorry.
iTunes.
Yeah, on iTunes.
Yeah, on iTunes, it was top of the art section.
Top of the art sections on iTunes, which is fantastic. And as I said, we had Chris on as a guest, and I believe it was the winter because we had about 3 or 4 courts on. I think I came down with pneumonia after that show, but it's also the longest show that we've ever had. So we've got Chris on now as a guest. Are you just telling us a little bit about? I asked about what was your journey been like? What has your journey been since you were last on Peep? And you were just explaining about how you'd had some trouble, some injury with your knee, and it was due for surgery. So I'll just let you continue from there.
Yeah, as I was saying, I just had a minor operation on my knee just to trim my meniscus. I had that problem actually when I was playing hockey for Great Britain, and I held back on getting an operation on my knee so I could attend the World Championships in Bratislava. So following that, I got a little operation on it, and it didn't really seem to help. So I've seen a private doctor, and he's telling me I've got torn femoral cartilage, torn meniscus, partially torn ACL, and I've got a Baker's cyst. But you know what? It's not really holding me back. I'm still training really hard, and I'm trying to build my leg up to try and keep going. Not really too much by way of operations that we can do for it at this stage. So I'm just trying to build everything up around about it and just keep training, man. That's the only way. Just keep going forward and train smart. I'm definitely training smarter than ever.
Definitely. I mean, I actually forgot to mention that as well as the blue belt in power kickboxing, jiu-jitsu. Obviously your training experience, etc., your background, your podcast, your professional, your profession, but also that you're a world class ice hockey player as well. But you have this injury. I mean, it tends to be knees and shoulders. I mean, I don't believe I'm overgeneralizing, but with athletes, I mean, knees and shoulders are the tend to be the ones that become damaged through wear and tear. They're very susceptible joints to injury, other than obviously impact. But you're saying that you're going to continue training and work around the injuries, but then to also, I mean, are you able to do exercises and take action to strengthen the muscles around the knee, around the joint, to strengthen the tendons and ligaments? And from that, how much of that do you think is going to hinder you in future development with your sports?
Well, I really had to revisit the way I was training. So I have been doing a lot more kind of conditioning work. I've lost quite a bit of weight as well since I was last on the show. I've actually cut 9 kilos.
Wow.
And I felt that losing that weight would help with my joints, which it has.
Yeah.
Fortunately, my wife's a physiotherapist, so she's been giving me exercises to do to work on stability. So I've been training a lot differently than I used to. I used to be very, very big on quite kind of hardcore strength and conditioning, lots of heavy lifting, lots of ballistic type stuff. But now I've slowed everything down somewhat, and I feel like I don't really need to lift weights as much now, because I'm getting that strength work in when I'm sparring, when I'm rolling with people, when I'm doing any type of wrestling. I feel like I'm getting what I need from that. And it's actually been quite good as well, because I've had to adapt my style of jiu-jitsu around about the injury in my knee, and I feel like it's making me much better than ever.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I was having this discussion with some of the junior students in one of my classes, and I was talking about, and forgive my ignorance because I can't remember the name of the gentleman, the jiu-jitsu player, but there's a jiu-jitsu kind of master out there who's, I'm sure he's a several degree black belt, who was born, I believe, with some kind of deformity on his
Jean-Jacques Machado.
Yeah, Machado, of course, which is which is Eddie Bravo's coach, is that correct?
Correct.
And yet he's one of the greatest jiu-jitsu players in the world. So he's taken something that could have been a disadvantage and turned it into a massive advantage.
Absolutely, he has. He's a phenomenal guy. Multiple-time world champion. I think he's won the ADCC as well, either once or a bunch of times. And it does not hinder him. He's a highly inspirational guy.
Yeah.
And he just adapted to suit him, which actually a lot of people use his adaptations now in their style of jiu-jitsu. So just because you have an injury does not mean that it is the end of the world and you need to step away from your sport. People have been telling me, this could just be it for you. Why don't you just try to do something else? Why don't you do low impact stuff? But if I hadn't changed my style of training and my style of warming up and cooling down and rolling, then yeah, I could totally see why they would say that. But I've been able to change everything in a way that I can have longevity in this sport that I love so much now.
I think that's the key, isn't it? I mean, it's you have to. It's like your brain. If you lose a tooth, you're at that thing for 3 months, sticking your tongue into your mouth to try and figure out where it's gone. It's like you have to remap your body. There's also this idea that when we have an injury, that the body has, as I say, it has almost a roadmap, so to speak, or a map of how the body should be, and then it adapts itself in a sense, or it tries to kind of fix that whatever's missing. And if it can't do that, then it'll adapt, but it takes time to do that from a mental perspective more than a physical perspective. So I mean, it's like what you say. It's an injury is only going to be only going to be, in a sense, as much of a hindrance as you allow it or you believe it to be. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, there's people out there who
Absolutely.
are fully healthy who, I'm saying fully healthy, but they have, complete physique, so to speak, and yet, they're doing nothing to improve that. And in actual fact, they're in worse health and a worse situation than somebody who's got perhaps a traumatic injury, and yet is able to kind of remap the mind around that, accept that, and move on from that. So it's an injury is only or some kind of event is only half the story. It's what was it, the top three? It's basically how you frame a situation in a sense, and then what you choose to do with that situation from now, rather than trying to put your energy into changing that. So. But that's interesting. It's interesting what you're saying is that you're adapting your jiu-jitsu around what's going to work for you, which in actual fact may end up making you a better jiu-jitsu, player, if that's the right word.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what you're finding right now in the world of jiu-jitsu is it's quite fashionable to go for heel hooks, leg locks, knee bars. That seems to be... people are maybe avoiding like the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu and not trying to master the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu just to go for this new fashion trend that's going on just now, which is kind of suiting me a little bit, because it's obviously I'm trying to avoid getting like my legs attacked, because they're one of them's already severely injured anyway, and I'm able to use the skills I've got and refine the skills I've got in these basic fundamentals. I'm not ever going to put myself in the same bracket as Roger Gracie, but I'm just going to use him as an example. He uses the same perfect basic traditional jiu-jitsu and is arguably the best fighter on the face of the planet. And he just uses the basic stuff, doesn't really attack legs, and he's able to avoid that type of attack as well. So I've definitely been researching guys of which I want to perform like, with adding my own flavour to it as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just wanted to ask you, because obviously we want to bring you back on in the future as a guest, do a summer show, and perhaps an outdoor show, and we'd like to delve a little bit more into that with you, and talk a little bit more on that. And perhaps if we're out, if we're outside, we can look at you could show us some of the skills and the techniques that we're discussing. I just wondered though, just before, because obviously it's a phone-in show, so we don't have a lot of time, but before we have to go, what I would like to ask you is a little bit about how I noticed on your Instagram feed, and you can follow Chris Reed on Instagram, which is, I believe, at Hollywood Reed. Is it? What was your Instagram?
I can't even remember what my Instagram is.
We're going to throw up your social media details on.
Let me see. That's actually, if you go to www.thechrisreedshow.com.
Right, there we go.
You can get all my links from there.
There we go. So www.thechrisreedshow.com. Did you say?
Yep, that's
brilliant.
correct.
And you can Chris Hollywood at Chris Reed Show as well.
Chris Hollywood at Chris Reed Show.
Well, Chris Hollywood, but at Chris Reed Show.
At Chris Reed Show, yeah. So at Chris Reed Show. So if you go online and go into www.chrisreedshow.com, all the details will be on there. But what I'd like to ask you just briefly before we have to move on to the next section. Not that I want to label you as a section, Chris, because you're a lot more than a section to me. but I've noticed on your Instagram feed that you're coaching a lot with some young guys that look like young dudes.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about the coaching that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I just want to say, in inverted commas, I am only a blue belt, but my black belt asked me to a couple of his friends' children. And I obviously, I would say yes. I'd say yes to any type of coaching if my black belt thought I was good enough to do so. So it's been absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's made me much better. Because I think, as you know yourself, being a coach, James, when you are teaching, it can only make you better mentally, physically, technically, because you have to learn to adapt to teach people at different levels, at different stages. You have to be able to look at when they're taking in the information you're giving them, and if not, be able to adapt that in a way of which they can understand. So I'm working with an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old right now, Luke and Ian, and these guys are sponges. They obviously, with like the explosion of mixed martial arts, with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, with kickboxing, it's everywhere. It's online, it's on TV. So these guys, they've wanted to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for quite a number of years now, and I'm sure they come to me with what they actually want to learn, and that's what I'm doing. They say, "Look, can you show us this?" So I say, "Okay, right, let's break it all down and then build it back up again." So rather than maybe me going in with, "This is what we're doing today," I'm actually going with the grain of what they want to learn to make it as interesting as possible for them. And it is absolutely bringing my game on more than ever, because they're coming to me with ideas and they're showing me their little twists on it as well. I mean, these are children, but they're ninjas. These guys are ninjas in the making. So I'm absolutely buzzing about it. It really, really gets me quite excited. So
it's fantastic.
I'm going to be, I train them every Saturday now, and they go away and they practice on each other, and then they come back and come to me with new ideas. It's fantastic.
Fantastic. Yep.
Say something to Chris.
Yeah.
Anybody see
What's that?
Johnny Lupo?
Anybody know who's that Bobby Lupo?
I need to watch that movie. Like, anybody seen Johnny Lupo? I need to watch that, man. I need to watch that.
The one a peep t-shirt.
A peep t-shirt. If you name the film, that's really interesting. I mean, you know, working with the youngsters, like you say, it is inspiring, I guess, you know, and it's a mentoring side of it, I think, as well. You know, it's good for young girls, but young boys particularly, I think, can struggle nowadays to find that kind of, you know, direction. And I think obviously jiu-jitsu is something that can really help to give them that. But can I ask you, did they ask you if you can beat Conor McGregor in a fight?
I would take him to the ground and I'd put him to sleep.
Yes.
He'd be, in a heartbeat, I'd snap my fingers and he'd just be out like a light.
That's how I want. He's
a joker.
Yeah. I remember when we were trying to set you up with a fight against what was that, Dan Bilzerian, but he never bit, did he?
I would ace him as well. He'd be out. He's a joker as well. We saw him cracking the bag, and we just weren't impressed, and he was talking about looking for an MMA fight.
That's right.
I'd fight him in a heartbeat. He can fly me out in his private jet, and I would fly back with it by myself.
Let's get it on.
What I'll say is, just one more thing about the kids side of things.
Yeah, please.
I guess it makes you want to be a better person actually working with children. Doesn't it? Because you want to lead by example. So it's not just the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that I'm teaching. I'm hoping I'm teaching them how to be young men.
Absolutely.
In the making.
Yeah,
right? So you're teaching them like attributes on how to cope under pressure, how to be respectful to each other, how to overcome obstacles. I just wanted to kind of add that bit on the end there.
Oh, absolutely. And responsibility. You know, truth and responsibility, I think, you know, and self. I don't want to say self-esteem, because that's an uncategorized word anyway, and it's misused and misrepresented, not fully understood. But I think an idea of self-worth, responsibility, you know, respect for self and for others, and you know, and I think young boys are craving that, and I think they desperately need that, because you know what, there's as you know very well, that you know, there's people out there, men and women, boys and girls, who've never once had one positive word of encouragement said to them, and what a difference that can make in somebody's life, and therefore the lives of others, you know, alongside them. And that's something we'll discuss, actually, if you would like to, on the show when we get you up. I'd like to delve a little bit more into that, into the need for, you know, for youngsters to have these mentors and strong role models, and strong male role models, and you know, and directing young children through coaching of many types. I just want to put a last little thing in as well, and I know this is really kind of what's the word? This is a very kind of pedestrian question, but I'm going to ask it and be very pedestrian. So when are we going to see that purple belt?
Well, I think, I mean, people are asking me that quite often, actually.
I thought so.
People at work, my wife. I think like when I was a white belt, I was absolutely ecstatic when I got little degrees on my belt, when I got tabs on my belt, and I was desperate to get my blue belt. But see, by the time, a funny quick little story. The day I actually got my blue belt, it was the only time ever, but I messaged my black belt and said, look, I'm not going to make it in tonight. My knee is just too sore. And he said, look, just come in. So I was like, oh, right, okay. So I went in and he gave me my blue belt. But see, kind of up till like the week before that, I really wasn't bothered about my blue belt anymore. It, like, jiu-jitsu for me had gone beyond that. I was quite happy being a white belt, strangling blue belts, strangling purple belts, trying to attack my black belt, and I felt quite competent enough to do those things. Now that I'm a blue belt, it doesn't bother me. It could be any colour. It could be the rainbow for all I care. It doesn't bother me at all. Yeah, you can get the kudos of having a purple belt, and that is a very amazing thing to have, to work towards. But belts mean nothing to me now. Yes, a black belt eventually would signify a lifetime's work, but I think your learning only begins each belt that you get. So yeah, who knows what will happen with that. I'll just keep trying to be the best blue belt I can possibly be for that time. I'd like to think that my belt isn't just a hobby belt. My belt is going to be a competitor's belt. It's going to be something that someone else maybe couldn't wear and be Chris Reed. My belt will only mean who I am at that time, you know?
Yeah.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, it's the representation of the belt is the representation of yourself and your soul, isn't it? It's
Yes.
That's when you're not, that's a good way to end. Listen, I want to get you back on the show. We're going to get you on the show in either July or August. We'll get you down for a summer show, have a few days, and we'll maybe do a bit of filming outdoors with you as well, you know, a bit of training, things like that. And we'll dip into a little bit deeper into some of the things that we've discussed tonight. So thank you for being our phone guest for tonight, Chris, and apologize for the technical hitches and all the rest, but thanks for supporting Pete Live, and I'll see you soon, brother.
I love the show. I'll catch you guys later. Thank you very much.
Take care, Chris. Have a good one. Take care, my man.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Brilliant, great guest to have on, Chris Reed. And I think it's Peep Live number 4. If you want to go on to Peep, onto the YouTube channel Peep, and scroll down, and I think it's episode number 4. We have Chris Reed on for nearly a 3-hour show discussing his training methodology. Longest show yet. A little bit about his hockey, a little bit about his training, and some of the things that we've shared. So going back on the combat news, we're just going to briefly discuss. We don't get too deep into it. So we had Lomachenko versus Linares for the WBA lightweight belt. Some interesting facts about Lomachenko. I mean, he is considered at the moment, pound for pound, the best boxer in the world right now, which is interesting considering that he's only had 12 professional fights, of which 9 of those have been knockouts. But the thing to remember with Lomachenko is you're not dealing with an ordinary professional fighter. You know, he's had nearly 400 amateur fights, so coming from a very solid pedigree, amateur pedigree. I also believe, and Lomachenko fans out there, Jamie, if you're watching, I'm sure you'll correct me, but I also believe he won 2 gold medals in the Olympics, if I'm not mistaken. So he has a very solid amateur pedigree. Also, the thing to remember is he won his first world title on his 3rd fight, I believe. And he'd actually attempted to win his first world title on his 2nd fight against a guy called Orlando Salido. He unfortunately, he lost that fight. I believe it was a majority decision to Orlando, Mr. Salido. But there's a little bit more to that. Orlando had not actually weighed in. He'd missed the weight, so in actual fact, the title then became vacant, and he walked into the ring at just under 150 pounds at 126 pound limit. So, you know, but still, one of the judges had awarded Lomachenko, but the other 2 had awarded to Salido. But what's interesting from that, so just to confirm, Lomachenko defeated Linares. There was a knockdown, I believe, in the 6th round. Lomachenko was knocked down in the 6th round with a straight right hand. Lomachenko's known for his angles and for his movement, but in that case, he'd stayed static for just that split second, and then the southpaw killer, because Lomachenko's a southpaw, Linares had thrown the right hand right down the middle, which then dropped Lomachenko. But it wasn't a harsh knockdown. Lomachenko was very, very aware of what was happening. He landed on his bum and had his gloves down, which is like a classic sign of, and kept eye contact with Linares. The same thing happened actually to one of my guys, one of my K1 and fighters and jiu-jitsu chaps, Matthew Stanners. Shout out to Matthew Stanners, my advanced blue belt. In his K1 fight, he took a big right hand down the middle. Matthew's not a southpaw, and he dropped down, but exactly the same thing. He dropped down on his bum with his gloves touching the ground at the same time, with his eyes in direct contact with his opponent, and then he got back up and won the next 2 rounds after that in very powerful, dramatic fashion. Very strong, I should say, strong and powerful fashion. Just incredible fight. One of the best kind of amateur, so to speak, fights that I've seen live. So it's an interesting one. So he's knocked down in the 6th, but then he came back and then boxed his way through, and I believe was it a right hook into the body. Lomachenko then stopped Linares in the 10th round and then became the WBA lightweight champion. Purse-wise, it was a career high purse for Linares, who received $1 million for the purse, and Lomachenko, I believe, received just above that at $1.2 million. So what's interesting is we have Lomachenko. He is considered the world's best boxer. He's won titles, I believe, at three different weights, world titles, and I also believe he has the record for the quickest, not the highest amount of weights, but the quickest that he's achieved those 3 belts within his fight career. Manny Pacquiao, I think, has got the record for the most amount of weights. I think that's around about 8 weights. I could be wrong. And De La Hoya, not to be underestimated, has won belts, I believe, at 6, possibly 7 different weights. Oscar De La Hoya, one of my all-time favorite fighters. So the interesting fact of the matter now is, where is Lomachenko going to go? Who's going to be Lomachenko's next opponent? And we'd like you, the viewer, to perhaps comment on this. One possibility, I don't have the fighter's name, but he may go looking for another belt, the WBO belt, apparently, belt holder. If any of you viewers out there can confirm who the lightweight WBO champion is, we can check that out in a second. That could be a potential. Manny Pacquiao's name has come up a few times, a fellow southpaw, quick. Manny Pacquiao, you could argue, is on the downward slide. He's not at the prime of his career, but however, he's still a big name and carries a lot of weight. But apparently, it looks like it could well be Salido, his old opponent from his second fight, Orlando Salido. They may be confirming him for Lomachenko's next fight. And that would be an interesting one, because it has that revenge angle, and the only guy to beat Lomachenko is a professional. And it might be that Lomachenko wants to even the score, so to speak. And it will sell for those who are Lomachenko fans. Any fan of Lomachenko is going to know who Salido is, know who he lost to. So I think that could be built into quite a big fight, and it could have that kind of you've always got to have a hero and a villain, but that kind of revenge angle. So that could be his next fight. Orlando Salido defending his WBA world title, with the idea that Salido would make weight, which he should be able to do, because it's a 2 weight divisions higher than it was when they'd first fought, and that would be an interesting fight for him to follow up with. So let's see if that happens. So staying on combat news, we're just going to brief through these. A little bit of news on Rico Verhoeven, who will be fighting on the next Glory 54. I'm going to have to read off the card here a little bit. Is it Glory 54? I believe so. So Rico's returned to the Fury camp, Tyson Fury, who I've said before, a big fan of here in the studio, to enlist help from boxing trainer Peter Fury for Glory 54. We have another call. I'm just going to finish this piece of news, and then we're going to speak to Kieran. In fact, I'll answer the phone and just from hello,
Cliff.
Kieran.
It's James. How you doing, Kieran? You okay?
James, where's Cliff at? Where's he hiding at?
Cliff is behind the camera. Kieran, we just stay on for a second. Stay on with me for just 1 second, my friend, because I'm going to introduce who you are. I'm just going to finish this little paragraph I've got here about Glory, and then I'm going to speak to you and introduce you to the viewers as well. So thank you very much, Kieran. So we're going to speak to Kieran imminently in the next minute or so, but I'm just going to finish this little section on combat news. So he'd enlisted the help help of the Fury camp for Holland to spar with the then champion Tyson Fury, as it was only 10 minutes away from Rico's home, who said we'd fight on Glory 54. And allegedly, Rico had pulled off the headgear and said, let's go, as both of his eyes were beginning to close. So the information that we have is that Tyson Fury could perhaps have in a sense, given a boxing lesson to Rico Verhoeven. But what would be interesting would be to see how Verhoeven's performance is on Glory after having such a high level, obviously, the linear heavyweight world champion to spar against in preparation for that. So that'll be interesting. So we're going to talk a little bit to Kieran. So I'm going to introduce the viewers. I believe Kieran is the owner and proprietor of Spennyfield Sports. Spennymoor Sports. I do apologise, Kieran.
It's fine. Everyone gets that wrong.
No worries. Listen, Kieran, I've not met you and spoke to you before, but I want to just first of all lead off by saying thank you very much for supplying us with those incredible gloves for last show's competition. They went down an absolute storm, so thank you for that. So I'll let you introduce yourself to the viewers if you would like, and just a little bit about where you are.
Yeah, so obviously my name's Kieran, obviously owner of Spennymoor Sports. Spennymoor Sports, established since 1975, and it's been going 43 years. So it's seen the golden years as such before the rise of Sports Direct and all the rest of it, and we're still here now to this day.
That's a great achievement.
And we're more of a specialist sports shop more than anything now, rather than a general, because obviously the whole sort of Sports Direct thing changed the sport and retail industry. So we had to specialise, and one of the specialist areas that we went into was boxing. And from there we've really enjoyed a lot of success, and probably in the past couple of years, it just got stronger and stronger. I mean, you guys will obviously agree with the way Northeast boxing is. Yeah. It's massive. Mm-hmm. Lewis Ritson, Josh Kelly, they're leading the way there for the Northeast. And then you've got obviously the other lads, on the brink of it. Darren Richardson, he's another one, a sponsor of mine, who I highly rate, out of Davy Binns' gym. And we enjoy a lot of good relationships with boxing clubs in and around the Northeast and up and down the country, Wales, Scotland. So it's good. It's going well, strength to strength, really.
Fantastic. I mean, it's interesting there, Kieran, you're saying you've been in the business now for 43 years. So I could just quickly ask you, and not quickly ask you, but just get a brief idea. When you're talking 43 years ago, that's before the internet existed, if I'm not mistaken. So it was, so it was a bricks and mortar job, correct?
Bricks and mortar, and it still is. I mean, we've still got we're still in Spennymoor Town High Street. Have been for obviously the 43 years. Yep. And obviously with me now, with the young blood in it, from Kev, the previous owner. Mm-hmm. You could say I'm more high tech savvy than what Kev is. Kev still likes to use the hand engraver, and I prefer the laptop and the keyboards now. Fair
one, yeah.
The flyers through the door.
Hey?
Flyers through the door, I think Cliff had shouted over there.
Oh, yes, flyers through the door and communications with pigeons, I think.
Yeah.
But obviously not anymore now. It's all email and WhatsApp and all this sort of thing now. Yeah. So it's going well. I mean, we haven't got a big presence online, but it's grown, and one thing that we do have over online retailers is we have a lot of people who come through our doors and want to see the product, want to try it on, want to try the boxing gloves on, the boots, and you don't get that anywhere else. So we are quite unique with that.
That's interesting. I mean, two points. Well, 1 point from what you've just spoken of there, and then something else I'd like to put into that. It's interesting you say that because at the end of the day, I mean, I personally am a big fan of Amazon. Not so much eBay, but I think Amazon's it's the world's it's the world's most profitable company and one of the world's biggest companies, and I think it does a tremendous job. And Jeff Bezos, he started that over I think 20 years ago. Coming onto that,
I've been seeing the picture that was doing the rounds on the internet of Jeff Bezos in that little office back in the day with Amazon.
Yes, I've done a bit of study on him and read quite a bit about him, and I mean that all started from just him wanting to do books because of they're easy to post out, and they're all recorded with the ISBN numbers. So I I think it's very important that we do have Amazon, and it leads to other sales in other areas. I've got no problem with the online. It is in a sense, for want of a better word, a shame that. There's bricks and mortar businesses that are shutting down. Woolworths. Yes. That was a while back. We all remember Woolies, and that was sadly missed.
Woolworths. There was actually a Woolworths across the road from us in the high street.
Yeah.
They closed with it when all of them went.
And that was arguably before, and that was before the .com era, but before the big boom of the internet, and we're seeing Topshop's in trouble. Is it Byron Burgers in trouble? Marks and Spencer's, Mother Care's in trouble. Yeah, there's a few. There's a few other ones that have actually. Curry's had to amalgamate with PC World to see it stay alive. And there's been several other closures as well, Kieran. That I'm not coming to mind. I throw in Marks and Spencer's, not that they're due to close, but they have to be careful. They're discussing rents and things, and so they should. Maplin, and as I think you said, Mother Care already. The point I'm coming to, though, is in spite of this, at the end of the day, the internet is an important part of business, and it always will be. It's not going to go back. But the key fundamental point, I believe, is a bricks and mortar business. And I'd like to get your what you believe to be true on this as well, if you don't mind, Kieran. Is that at the end of the day, people still want, number one, they want that personal touch. They want to speak to people. They want not just advice, but they want that human connection, because that is what's going to keep bricks and mortars alive. And secondly, people want to touch the stuff. What do you think on that, Kieran?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, people come in and it's the same thing. They say, I can maybe get it a bit cheaper on the internet, or they just want to touch and feel it. They want to see it. They want to, they want to, have that sort of physical contact with it, and you don't obviously get that with the internet.
Yeah.
And also as well, we live in that age now where everyone likes the convenience. If somebody wants something, they want it now.
Yeah.
So rather than sit and wait for a few days for it coming in the post, if you can just come on down to the store, see it, touch it, feel it, buy it there on the day, then that's great. But as a retailer, that's it's still tough to do, because you've got to make sure you're carrying the stock and all the rest of it, and you're not carrying too much stock and all that sort of thing. So it has its pros and cons.
Yeah, and I think on that point, because it is now. We are at the point now, as far as delivery, where you can order something. Again, I'm using Amazon as a prime example, because not you personally, Kieran, but people. No. Cannot disagree with the fact that Amazon is the number one online retailer. It truly is.
You can't ignore it, can you?
You can't ignore it. And they're at the point now, if you order something, it'll be there the next day. Now, you don't have to wait days, but here's the thing. And it might even get to the point, and God forbid this actually happens, when we've got drones dropping down packages within our delivery. Hopefully that'll never happen. But
Amazon trying to trial that?
Well, they are trying it. They're actually trying it at the moment, and believe it or not, one of the ideas they have for the future is to have a warehouse in, not an air balloon. What they're called, Zeppelins, almost on like a Zeppelin, and have the warehouse kind of in the sky. This is true. This is actual. It's not just made up. And the most economical way to do that is not to have like rotor blades, but to have essentially a giant balloon. I'm going to call it a Zeppelin, and then have the staff kind of shuttled up into them for like 2 or 4 week shifts, similar to what you have on oil rigs, and then the stuff's just sent down from there. So, but they are actually trialing the drones. But I think, let's say it ever gets to the point of that happens, and you can order something, have it within in the hour. What do you think? Or do you think then, therefore, it will come down to the human connection? And how effective is that for you in your business? Do you know your customers almost on a first name basis now, or some of them anyway?
Well, to be fair, I mean, the way it's been going, I'm dealing with new people and new customers day in, day out.
Brilliant, fantastic.
And I think the big thing about it with us, and the reason why we're growing in an age where high street shops dying off, and we seem to be getting stronger and stronger, is we sort of go on the basis of whatever the big competitors are doing, we do the opposite. And we don't just look to specialize. Brilliant. We look to become specialists within, specializing within being a specialist as well.
Fantastic.
So recently we launched our name embroidery service for boxing boots.
Yeah.
Now there's no one in the country that does name embroidery, custom name embroidery on boxing boots. And we thought that was a great idea. You know, people could come down, see it, see the examples, have a chat with us, see what they wanted, and they could get, a custom pair of boxing boots. Where else can you get that? Amazon don't do that.
Absolutely.
eBay don't do that. Geezers, probably they are the biggest boxing online retailer in the country, but they don't even do that. So
brilliant.
I think it's important, being a high street store, bricks and mortars, is you've just got to you've got to specialize within being a specialist, really.
That's
what you've got to keep doing.
And what's interesting is when you said that, whatever the big retailers are doing, you're doing the opposite, the purple cow, so to speak. So, you're not looking to replicate. And I think as well, correct me if I'm wrong, but with you being at the present, a small business, that, it's not a case of, the captain, if you use this analogy, the captain gives an order, who then gives it to the lieutenant, who then tells it to the next, to the engine room. The engine room's got to tell another guy, stoke the coal. Then you got to turn the wheel. Then you got to wait for the ship to turn. You can turn on a dime, so you can change. Have business decisions made within an hour. It stops with you, so you can say, right, we're going to do this. We'll try this. Didn't work. Right, try this. Let's look at this. So you can be quick on your feet. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, we're sort of with the head of the snake. People come to it, and you're not dealing with someone who then has to, like you say, pass a message on to such and such, and it goes like a chain down there. It's you come and deal with me, and I sort it from there, and we get it sorted. So it's, people can get what they want there and then with me. Yeah,
fantastic. We got a question from Cliff.
Can I just say a big thanks to from Kieran and Spenny Sports to sending the gloves as well. Just a big thanks.
Oh yeah, we shouted that out. Yeah, at the start, we shouted out at the start. Once again, we'll just reiterate that. Thank you very much for sending the gloves and for being a partner with Peep. That means the world to us. I mean,
well, like I say, I'll have no doubt more prizes for you to give away on the future episodes. No doubt.
Fantastic, Kieran. I mean, we're going to, and for the viewers at home, on our part of our syntax section, we go outside of the studio and we go to locations. As I say, we don't just talk combat sports. We talk, we talk art, science, music, history, etc., streetwear, street life, streetwear, etc. But what we'd like to do as part of that section is to, if you would have us, is to come into the store and do a little piece on the store itself. It'd be great to get in there, to film a little bit, to have a chat, face-to-face chat with yourself, talk about the business, have a look at some of the products, see some of the best sellers, see perhaps some new products that haven't been revealed yet, do a little bit of a promotion in a sense of coming down to the store and having a chat with you and doing a section there if you'd have us come in.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you'll get to see the shop as well. I think it's one of those shops where there's been a bricks and mortar shop since 1975. Believe it or not, you've still got some trainers there on the shelf that have sort of kept as furniture or what I call decorative purposes now.
Right.
From the 1980s and whatnot. So there's a bit of nostalgia still with the shop. So you'll have to come down and see all that. Yeah.
Did you say trainers? Sorry, did you say like running?
Yeah, trainers. Yeah,
For the sneakerheads out there, I'm thinking for Complex.
Yeah, if you're into your old school Reeboks and Adidas with those old three-stripe brown and black boxes, and we've got things like that. I think I found some. Remember the Adidas Predators back in the day?
Yeah, I do remember those actually.
So I can remember when we were having a sort out, when I took over the shop and we were having a sort out, I unearthed 6 pairs of Adidas Predators, all from the original 90s years.
Brilliant. So, well, interestingly, there's a YouTube channel. We'll have to tag them in when we come down and see it, called Complex, and they have various quote unquote celebrities coming in and shopping for sneakers, and two of the biggest kind of two of the premier sneaker stores. There's one called Stadium Goods and another one called Flight Club, and they're selling trainers that can go up to like $5,000, $10,000, and real old school. So we'll tag them in when we come down and see you, because I think there'll be a bit of an interest in that actually. So obviously we'll look at the boxing. That's a big interest. We're a combat, essentially a combat channel, but we do diversify, and that'll be an interesting little look into into a bit of nostalgia there, and a bit of retro going on, which would be great. So Kieran, I'm just gonna give you a shout out there. Can you just give us the address of your online address and the shop address perhaps as well?
So the online store is www.spennymowersports.com.
Yep.
And you can follow us on Instagram at SpennyMowersport, and obviously on Facebook, SpennyMowersports.
Yep.
SpennyMowersports, yeah. And yeah, High Street, if you want the High Street address and you want to come on down and sat-nav it, it is SpennyMowersports, 24 High Street, Spennymower, DL166DB.
Fantastic. That is brilliant. So guys, if you want the best of boxing right now, if you actually want to go down and have a look and try things out, try some gloves on, check out some of those retro sneakers, get some of the best deals, certainly the best service and the best quality equipment. If you want something embroidered, if you want your boxing boots embroidered, that's the only place in the country that you can go down and get it done over the counter. You've got my man Kieran here, a real gentleman there who'll be happy to help you as much as he possibly can. And you know what? Take a drive down there. Do you know, if an hour's drive, go down, have a look. Have a look in the store. Support the store. Support what is a 42-year historical business. And you know what? Even if it means spend an extra £2 instead of getting it on Amazon, let's do that, because the service and the quality will be more than worth it. So, Kieran, thank you very much for joining us tonight. As I say, I look forward to coming down. We're both of us coming down and see you, bringing Peep on the road to Spennymoor Sports, and hopefully we'll speak to you soon, my friend.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you, boys. Keep up the good work.
No worries. Take care, Kieran. Thank you very much. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
See you, pal.
Fantastic. So we had Kieran there from Spennymoor with an Moore Sports, our second and final calling guest. So that was brilliant. So guys, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point. You can go onto Amazon, and we're a big support of Amazon here at Peep. In fact, you could probably look around and pick things that are from Amazon. And it's not just a case of supporting your store. It's also actually for your own benefit as a consumer, to actually get into a store and see some of the things that you want to see. And the other point to make is, say if you type in boxing gloves, Cliff, on, say, Amazon.
Yeah.
And you start scrolling down, you get bored after 2 or 3 scrolls. Yeah. Well, if you're actually in the store, you could see, 40, 50 pairs of gloves almost at once, and one's going to catch your eye, and you can take them out the bag and try them on, and you're going to be supported there by Kieran. So
yeah, we're going to go on the
we're on board with that. Right, guys, so we've covered that. We've had our phone in, so now we're going to move on to our usual slot with Ridley Scott. So this is what we call Ridley Rewind. Cue the graphic. Get that graphic on. Get the graphic on. We're just shooting through now.
Yeah, usual
shot with Ridley Scott. So, as I say, we're not going to go too deep into it. Just to say that Ridley Scott is a supporter of the show. Cliff had a bit of a history with him at university. I think he came in to see one of the, to do a lecture or to show his support. And Cliff had started talking to him and explained about what his, what his intention and dream was to start his own channel. With his art. Cliff's also a very accomplished artist, which we'll perhaps do on another show. And talking about his interest in film and film cinema, etc. So he does support the show. He does tune in now and again, and we are hoping to have him on the show at some point. But as you can imagine, he's quite a busy man. So that's why we tend to have, that's why we do have our usual slot with Ridley Scott. And this week, we're going to be on Ridley Rewind. So we're going to talk about one of his past films. It's interesting. This isn't the film we're doing tonight, but when you say Black Hawk Down, not many people realize that he actually directed it. But a film that Ridley Scott, arguably, correct me if I'm wrong, Cliff, but arguably the film he's most well known for is, I think, Alien and Blade Runner, perhaps.
Yeah.
But here's a film that a film that was released almost in the new, not decade, millennia, the year 2000, actually released in 1999, is Gladiator. So we're going to talk a little bit about Gladiator, a winner of 5 Academy Awards starring Russell Crowe. we're not going to review the film, although I will give you my out of 10 mark at the end for the film. We're just going to be a brief synopsis of the film, some recommendation for it, and some interesting facts about it. And then for yourselves, you could maybe dip in and watch a trailer. You could go on YouTube and watch a trailer. We may even have a link for a trailer on the thumbnail. And pick up a copy. We've got a copy in the studio right now. You can see it there.
Giving away James's copy.
Well, given this, if you can answer this, who directed Gladiator? So, a few funny stories. To be fair to James, no, it's if I had a guest, I would give a guest if a guest hadn't seen it. But here's the thing. What's interesting. I'll be honest, I've watched this film. I think I went to the cinema, I believe, on 3 occasions to see this film. I was so impressed with it that I went in on 3 occasions, and I've watched it numerous times on DVD. But what I thought was, as we were doing the Ridley Rewind on Gladiator, that I would rewatch the film. And I gave myself enough time to rewatch the film. But here's the thing, Cliff. What I hadn't realised is that I've got the 3-disc extended special edition with extra footage that I just could not get through it all. I could have watched the original one. The cinema edit I could have watched twice over, and I'm still struggling through. And to be quite honest with you, do you know what it is, right? I don't know. Have you ever seen Aliens, the extended edition of Aliens, Cliff?
Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah. Don't agree with me if you don't agree, don't agree. But when you tends to be, and there's an exception to this, it tends to be when you watch films which haven't had the cuts put in, you kind of realize why the bits were cut out, because it's stuff that just isn't kind of relevant, and it actually, the talent of the editor, because it actually changes the whole, what's the word I'm struggling for?
Continuity. Not
just the continuity, but like the feel of the film has changed radically. And I'll tell you a good example of that, going off key, is, The Greatest Showman. I've seen it. I think it's a fantastic film, by the way, right? Yeah. But there's an example of that. There's a YouTube channel, and what they do is they give 5 different genres of the film, like a war film, horror film, comedy, musical, obviously. Yeah. And what they do is they do their own edits of the film and put in different music, and it actually changes the whole kind of, I don't know if demographic is the right word, but the whole kind of feel and emotion of the film. So I hadn't managed ambience. So I hadn't managed to watch the whole film again. However, here's my synopsis. So Gladiator is a non-historical, let's call it, swords and sandal drama. It's Ridley Scott's first foray into what's called the swords and sandals genre, which is very popular in the 50s and 60s. We can talk about Ben-Hur. We can talk about The Great Spartacus. We can talk about many of the ones that I hadn't bothered to research and list for you, which was released to great acclaim in movie theaters in 1999. This is when The Gladiator came out. The film starred Russell Crowe as the main protagonist, the gladiator Maximus. Shout out to Maximus. I don't have Maximus's full name, actually, but shout out to Maximus, which Chris Reed has named Max after the Maximus in the film. I'm looking, is it Maximus? What is his full name? I should have at least got that. However, we shall continue. So it tells the story of his journey from general of a Roman army, the armies of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who's played by Richard Harris. Marcus Aurelius was obviously a historical figure. This isn't based on history, but it does take some of the historical figures and kind of include them into the film to give it some kind of, I suppose, support to the story, but it doesn't get drawn into as a historical drama, but it actually focuses on the character. The character of Maximus had apparently existed in some form, but not in the form that's projected onto the screen, both figuratively and literally. So his family, Marcus Aurelius, and spoiler alert, his family is brutally murdered, and he's actually made to become a gladiator slave, and he then resurrects himself metaphorically as the savior of Rome. The film touches on some classic hero archetypes, which is part of the reason why it was so popular, and it found tremendous popularity with the audiences, as I said before, winning 5 Academy Awards and reigniting the historical swords and sandals drama in Hollywood. Because if you think of some of the films that came after this, for example, Kingdom of Heaven, which was actually another Ridley Scott film, Troy, was quite well known. Troy was another film. Robin Hood, which was kind of that sense and in a way not, that also starred Russell Crowe. Alexander, which was another film which was starred, I believe, Angelina Jolie and the Irish actor whose name I can't remember, and a little bit later 300. So it really reignited that. The film itself it has tremendous production values and some incredible script writing. Now the original writers, when the film was greenlit to go ahead, they didn't have a full script. They were still playing around with a script, still trying to figure out how it would flow through. So as the film was actually in production, that's when they started to kind of realize, okay, we need to have a through line here, and the through line has to be Maximus's want to return home, and to return home to his family who'd been brutally murdered earlier in the film. So how were they going to do that? One of the main writers, whose name I don't have, he'd said that he doesn't want to see just a fight of a strong man fighting other strong men and becoming triumphant. He wanted to see a love story. So how are you going to have this love story when his wife and child had been brutally murdered earlier in the film? And what he said was it would to have a connection to the afterlife. So cut through the entirety of the film are these scenes of Maximus, in a sense, contacting his wife and child through prayer, and his search to kind of rejoin them in the afterlife, but completing his mission to defeat Commodus. Now, Commodus is the son of Marcus Aurelius, and Commodus was played by Joaquin Phoenix, a fantastic performance, which he actually tried to get out of earlier in the filming. He got to Great Britain and decided the weather wasn't for him and wanted to be out of it. And Commodus murders his father and then becomes the emperor of Rome, and he wants to basically wipe out the Senate and become the one and only kind of dictator. And so Maximus has this quest to defeat Commodus, who is also directly responsible for the I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, for the murder of his wife and child. So throughout this is this theme of wanting to return home, and it's interesting as well because half of the audience, apparently, or 50% or 40, I think 50% of the audience was women. It wasn't just men or young men coming along just to watch the fight scenes and the action. It was actually women who were connected to the character of Maximus, because not only was he a very strong archetypical hero, he was also a very loving hero, and that appealed very much to women who also supported the movie. I don't have the figures of how well it did at the box office, but it was a tremendously popular film, both critically acclaimed and through bums on seats. And that's, I mean, I did say spoiler alert at the start. I mean, I've given you a synopsis of the film. It is a tremendous, I don't want to call it an action, but kind of I don't want to call it, I would say it's an epic film, an epic drama based in Rome. We have a question from the audience, I think, just before we...
$457.6 million US.
Thank you. $457.6 US million. It made on its cinema release, I guess that would, so $500 million on its cinema release. And since then, it's obviously generated so much more income through DVD, Netflix, streaming services, etc. I would say it's interesting. I mean, I think my favorite Swords and Sandals film is Spartacus. So I think Spartacus. Stanley Kubrick, yeah, who directed that, the legendary Stanley Kubrick, and that starred, don't tell me, who was the star of Spartacus? I can't believe I've forgotten that. Kirk Douglas. I think that's, do you know the thing with Spartacus, if I'm all honest, I don't think I've ever watched that all the way through. It tends to come on, on Sundays or bank holidays, and you'll catch a part of it. I think I maybe watched it once all the way through. But there's so many layers to it. The cast, tremendous actors that was cast in the film. The writing was tremendous. The story, the fight scenes, the emotionality, and I would say that Gladiator equals that. It perhaps doesn't have the the legendary status, but it certainly is on par with Spartacus. And I think one of the best Swords and Sandals, quote unquote, feature films out there. Russell Crowe put on a tremendous performance. At the time, he wasn't an A-list movie star, but a very, very solid actor. And casting him for the main role as Maximus was a bit of a coup, and he really put his heart and soul into the role. Another standout actually was Oliver Reed, the late Oliver Reed, and that was the last film that he'd appeared in, because he actually died during the production, not on set, but on production of the film. And it was one of the early examples of using kind of CGI mapping, because after the actor had tragically passed away, he hadn't filmed his scenes, so they'd taken body doubles and then mapped his face onto some of the doubles so that they could finich the movie, because it was been a tremendous expense to reshoot, and a great shame not to have Oliver Reed, who is and is a tremendous actor and a very well known kind of on the UK scene during the 60s, when he was at his kind of his peaks and 70s, and again, I mean, what a tremendous actor to have on. Incredible performance, a very deep and layered performance from Oliver Reed. He'd actually died arm wrestling, believe it or not, some British sailors in a bar, because Oliver Reed was known for his, he was a big drinker, and he'd actually died of a heart attack on the set. But it's a kind of a, I suppose a reflection on his abilities, and that he can forever be found within Gladiator. We're going to talk a few. Do we have another question? Go for it.
A big up from Richard Hunter.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, I need to mention. Can I?
What in my mind?
Fantastic! I need to mention Richard Hunter, because we're going to have Richard on as a guest. I was actually going to have him on as a phoning guest on the next show. I'd spoke about having Richard on tonight, Cliff, if that's the same Richard Hunter. So I'm going to come to that in a second. So Mr. Hunter, please stay on, because I'm going to speak about you in 2 seconds, and the business that you have on Instagram. So, a few little facts for you before we wrap this up. So the rhino, do you know about the rhino, Cliff? The rhino. So, you don't know about the rhino on Gladiator, the Gladiator rhino. You don't know about that?
The Gladiator TV show?
No, the film Gladiator. So here's the thing. Ridley Scott had wanted to have something very kind of dramatic happen. Now, as part of, as history teaches us, as the writings teach us, that during these gladiatorial combats in either the Colosseum or any of the smaller venues that they had, and obviously these are based on historical fact, not only would they pit man against man and had different types of gladiators that would fight with different weapons, such as, nets and swords and tridents, and they had all these various names. They also pitted animals against one another as well. They I wouldn't say they almost created the extinction of animals, because we still have, most of them, if not all of them now. But they go around the world. They would bring elephants, tigers, bears, rhinos, alligators, I said that, crocodiles, panthers, and pit them against each other in the arena, as well as pitting, man against animal and all this type of thing. In actual fact, one of the other things that they did, I don't know if you believe this or not, Cliff, but this is also a historical fact, is they would flood the Colosseum so they could have naval battles.
Honestly, it's amazing.
Yeah, and they'd have boats against, fighting off against each other, like actual pitched battles. And when you think about it, we're talking, thousand. When was this be circa? Well, thousands of years ago, when this was going on. And to think of the kind of technology, so to speak, or the mechanics they would need to do that, it blows the mind. But what was interesting is, there were tigers in the film, but Ridley Scott wanted to have a rhino, and he wanted to have this great battle with Maximus fighting this giant rhino charging at him. But when they looked at it, they'd have to have done a mix of practical, CGI, as well as props, and it was going to cost over $1 million, and they were fighting against budget. So unfortunately, the rhino was cut from the movie. So that 70 AD, after the AD, yeah. So round about, we're talking, well, nearly 2,000 years ago. The Colosseum, here's another interesting fact. The second interesting fact: the Colosseum that was built for the scene, the prop, so to speak, the scenery that was put together for the Gladiator movie, was made to be durable for use as a potential tourist attraction. So apparently Ridley had said to the Maltese government, which is where it was filmed, would they like to keep the Colosseum and the sets after they'd finished to use as a tourist attraction, and if they did, that Ridley Scott was going to build them out of durable materials and foundations and all this kind of thing. I don't think they were going to give them to the Maltese government. They would have the option to buy them for, $1 million or $500,000. The Maltese government turned them down and said, no, we just want everything taken and removed back. It might have been the case that they said they'd keep them if they could use everything for free and shoot that for free. I don't know. Anyway, they turned them down until they'd seen the finished movie. Yeah. And once they'd seen the movie, they were like, do you know what? Yeah, can we keep those? Yeah. But unfortunately, they built them out of balsa wood, plywood and plaster. Yeah. So by that time, they'd gone. So unfortunately, they'd lost out. But that was an interesting little piece there. But Lord of the Rings, I think they'd taken all the... I'm going off shoot, but same in New Zealand. I mean, how many tourists go over there to see where Lord of the Rings was filmed? And I don't know if any of those sets exist as well. So that was interesting. So your third interesting fact, I hope you find this interesting, or your third film fact, in the tiger, the dangerous tiger scene, there's a rumor that there was CGI tigers. There was no CGI used whatsoever. It was only real tigers that were used during the shoot of that scene, which were brought on set, with obviously the help of green screen. And this scene where the tiger jumps onto Maximus's back was actually a stuntman who was trained to... The tiger had treats in his pocket, and the tiger would jump on and we'd give the tiger treats. So, but what was interesting is the producers who were on set, when the tigers were there, were saying, when the tigers were brought on set and they're sitting in the cage saying, and I'm a cat person, by the way, they were like, it's no good. They don't actually do anything. They're not very good, are they? But then they'd see the tigers become aroused once some bait was there, and it would just be like lightning. And there was one extreme or the other. Like just totally docile or ferocious killing machines that you just could not stop if you tried. Also, they were told to keep young children off the set in case it aggravated the tigers, and they kicked off. So that was interesting. And I mentioned a little bit about Oliver Reed, actually, that he unfortunately passed away, tragically passed away on production of the set in an arm wrestling competition whilst he was drinking a bar dry, which, I think he would have, if he was going to go, I think he would want to have gone like that. I'll recommend a biography, which I've read twice, Oliver Reed's biography called Evil Spirits. It's a bit of a shame, the name, but they're not so much talking about his being an evil spirit, even though he was known as a bit of a what's the word? Not trouble cause, a hellraiser. Rebel. Rebel. He was known as that crowd with, I think, I said Richard Harris before. Who were the big drinkers? Richard Peter O'Toole, Oliver Reed. And he was known, but I think the evil spirits were referring to his addiction to alcohol because he was an alcoholic. But, it's a fantastic biography, Evil Spirits. Recommend it. Go on Amazon, pick that up. And it's, God bless Oliver Reed. A tremendous actor, a tremendous British actor. So to summarize on as far as an out of 10 for Gladiator, I'm gonna have to give that, and I'm a harsh marker. I would have to give it a solid 8 out of 10 due to the the content, the filmography, etc. The characterization, the layers. Cliff, Gladiator, what are you gonna give it out of 10? We'll give you.
I'm gonna give Gladiator a 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. We're gonna go for 9 out of 10. So that's a definite recommendation. One thing just before this question, one thing I will add, and I challenge anybody to find this on, you heard it here first. I spotted a scene in Gladiator that I don't think anybody else has ever seen before, pun intended. Do you want to hear what it is?
Go for it.
Right? I spotted this. I've never seen this because when they do these everything wrong with, or people try and spot, like, I don't know, somebody walking by with the wrong kind of costume on and film blunders, right? Check this out. Nobody's seen this. I spotted this yesterday when I was researching this for the. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, mate.
Do you know the first fight scene when the Romans are fighting the Germanians, and the Germanians are coming down believe they're coming down the hill to meet the Romans? Yeah. Okay, stay with me, guys. And you heard it. Has this got like a time thing on? So, and a date on the YouTube, so people know we've said it first. When other people on the internet start going on about it, they'll know that we've really.
You've seen it here first.
We've seen it here first. Premiered it. So as the clash, right? So the clash and the fighting, like on that bit of a hill. So they come down the hill. The Romans are here with the shields. The Germanians are here. They're coming to to meet the Romans, and they're battling there before they move off, and the shields are up. Yeah. There's a cut from about 1 to 2 seconds, and you see 2 of the Germanians, whilst everybody else is fighting and mashing on, laughing and talking to each other. No, seriously, listen, talking to each other and laughing with one of the Romans on the other side. Oh, wow. That is true. And I looked at it 3 times, and I paused it and slow-moed it, and you can see it clearly. And how they didn't spot that on the edit, I have no idea.
James?
Yep.
I'm going to call Ridley now. He'll be disgusted in this.
You need to either. I think we should call Ridley or message him and let him know, because I don't know how they missed that. I hope they don't. What's the word? Retroactively recall the 5 Oscars for this, and that's not going to be my fault. But that's true. So that's Gladiator. Right, we're coming towards the end of the show, guys, but we do have another part of Peep Excess we're just gonna talk about before we do our little wind down.
We've just got a couple of things for
Yeah,
pounds.
no, that's fine. I wanted to mention Richard now. Actually, that was my next thing I wanted to do.
He's going to go, that's all.
Yeah, go, please.
Richard Hunter, he shared it across Facebook and LinkedIn, so thanks for that, Richard.
Fantastic. Well,
Contact me about co-promotion with the Fit Hut.
will do. Yeah, so I want to just Richard Hunter. He's the CEO of and creator of the Fit Hut. So if the Fit Hut basically supplies all different types of sporting equipment, sporting wear for not just combat sports but running, biking, basketball, etc. You can find them on Instagram and get a feel of what they're actually doing. And I believe it's just the Fit Hut. So if you go on Instagram and type in the Fit Hut, that will come up. And please follow the Fit Hut. We're going to have Richard, Mr. Hunter, on a future show, either as a guest in the studio or as a phone-in guest. And they will also be partnering with us for that show, and that means they'll be providing with us some type of giveaway, similar to what Spenny More Sports did, and we'll have a question for you there. So once again, get on Instagram, type in the Fit Hut, follow them. We'll have Richard on as a phone-in guest, perhaps on the next show, definitely, if not in person, and support him there. And just an added interesting fact that I believe I am undefeated on layups against Mr. Hunter, because I'm known as a bit of a basketball whiz, and we do tend to compete with each other on basketball. So that's that.
We've got like a kind of a double question.
Let's do it. Question away, please, or statement. Yep.
Thanks for the shout out. Can only stick around for 5 minutes though. Speak soon. Great production, guys. Top crossover fight: Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou, but that hasn't actually happened. So if he's trying to win the T-shirt, that's not it.
I'll tell you. Can we shout out that Francis Ngannou from the UFC who lost against Stipe? That's a fantastic crossover fight.
It's a good match.
What we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about that when you're a guest on the show, either a phone-in guest or in person. So we're going to talk about that, but that doesn't win the T-shirt, because that's not the one we have on here. But that is a fantastic crossover fight. So we're going to talk a little bit on that.
Brilliant. And then we've got a question again from Richard Hunter from
Please.
Fit Hut.
Yep.
Question: in your opinion, who is the best up-and-coming MMA fighter to look out for? And where is the next hotbed of fighters?
That's two good questions. So who do you think is for the upcoming? Who's the potentially the greatest upcoming MMA fighter? That was the first question, and the second question is, where do you think the current hotbed of MMA fighters? Where will that be? I'm assuming, are we doing country or gym?
I'm presuming he means country.
Yeah, country of the hotbed of MMA fighters. Interesting questions. I mean, it's an interesting one. To be honest, I don't have an answer for that. I'm just trying to stroke my brain now. I think what would be interesting to me, on just answering the second question, as far as what country a future MMA greats or MMA prodigy is going to come from. For me, it's kind of back to the style again. I'd be interested to see, what athletes are going to cross over from other styles. I was watching a chap the other day, an Eastern European chap, high-level Thai boxer. Are we going to see more athletes coming in from other sports into MMA, from the Muay Thai side of things, from the wrestling, from the boxing, and is that going to be a byproduct of having seen Conor McGregor fight Floyd Mayweather and popularizing MMA for those who weren't as aware? Because as popular as MMA is, there's those boxing fans who may have been turned on to it. So is that going to create a little bit more of an interest in those wanting to compete in MMA? So I'd be interested to know what Chris's answer for that. Do you have an answer for that, Cliff, for upcoming MMA star, rising star of MMA? I can't answer that, because, to be honest, I've not been watching any of the rising stars of MMA.
There is a few I've got in my head floating around, but the one that comes to mind is...
Not Khabib, no, because he's already champ. Yeah. I mean, some great fighters. I mean, not so much an upcoming because I'm going to mention Stephen Wonderboy Thompson now. Now I know he's not an up and coming fighter. He's established now. Does he hold the belt? Is he got the? Is he the middleweight champ? I don't think he is. Is he? No, not Khabib. Wonderboy Thompson. I'm sure my ignorance here.
I think he is a former champion.
And it's interesting that, Wonderboy has not been on the scene for that long. He's lost one or two. But, coming from his kickboxing background and establishing himself, as a kind of a strong cog in the wheel of the UFC. I think that's an interesting one. It'd be interesting to see how long he stays for and how high he rises. So I can't answer the question because I don't know any young up and coming. And I guess if we said up and coming, those who've had 5 or less fights or 10 or less fights, but that would be interesting for the viewers to please give me your feedback. Let me know what you think, because I couldn't answer that. If I was going to say country again, there's too many variables that come into it. I think for me personally, I'd be interested in seeing what style of fighting fighters are coming in from. What background different fighters coming in from. I'm watching an interview at the minute with John St. Pierre, one of the all-time legends of MMA. He's on with Joe Rogan. He's on fantastic. And GSP for me is he's the whole package, and he's got everything. He's personable. He's not a confrontational guy. He's a tremendous athlete, and he was known for his wrestling. I mean, his nickname was Rush, wasn't it? Which is named from his his takedown. But he wasn't a collegiate wrestler. His background was in traditional martial arts within karate. But then he learned that. Perfected his wrestling, and then obviously made that one of his most effective tools in his MMA career. So for me, it's seeing styles, not so much countries. I mean, the UK's got some tremendous MMA athletes. America's obviously got some tremendous MMA athletes. I'd be more interested in what your thoughts are, because I can't comment because I don't have the knowledge on that. But as I said, just to reiterate, for me, it's what styles, what crossovers are we going to get, what young athletes are going to be stepping into the MMA world, as it becomes more and more popular. Although I would say it's reached its peak in popularity. The MMA fans out there be wanting my guts for garters. But I think MMA has reached its peak. I can't really see it growing much more than where it is. It's reached that kind of, what's the word? It's reached its kind of level. I think in pop culture, it's where it's at. So and for me, with professional boxing, if you put on a professional boxing match, and I'm not necessarily saying I prefer one over the other, although boxing is more of my thing than MMA, although I've got a deep affinity and I train in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. If you put a boxing show out, you're selling out 50,000 tickets live gate. You put an Anthony Joshua against Tyson Fury. What kind of gate are you looking at that? They're just selling out. Would you get that if you put the top 2 MMA fighters on together and put that on let's say, what's the biggest arena in the UK as far as bums on seats? It's no longer Wembley, is it? What is that? Or is it Wembley? Or is it the O2? But what I'm trying to say is, if you took the top 2 most popular boxers and put a show on, everything else being equal, undercard, etc., prices, Manchester 21,000. Okay, are you going to get the same sellout if you take the top 2 MMA fighters and put them on together? Or has been proven when you take 2 of the top athletes in their chosen sports, Mayweather, McGregor, then you have the highest grossing gate and the highest grossing pay-per-view in history. Right, guys, we're running out of time, so we're going to wrap the show up with this Peep XS. We're going to talk a little bit about talk a little bit about The Grizzly Man, which is an incredible documentary by Werner Herzog, a great German director. This is a documentary that I'd watched a number of years ago. So I'm going to read you a little synopsis and just give you my experience of the documentary, and you can perhaps experience it for yourself, because I'm sure it's available on YouTube. YouTube Red, I think it is. It'll be on Amazon, I'm sure. It may even be on YouTube just to watch, but it's worth supporting it. And you could buy a copy of the DVD for probably 99 pence or a couple of quid. So it's definitely something worth watching. So The Grizzly Man chronicles the life and death of bear enthusiast Timothy Treadwell. Excuse me. The film includes Timothy Treadwell's own footage of his interaction with grizzly bears. So basically, the documentary is about this gentleman called Timothy Treadwell. And what he would do is he would go into the wild and he would camp out and stay out in the wild. And he'd film grizzly bears. He'd kind of watch the bears interacting. He'd film, he'd talk about them. And he developed this kind of fascination. I don't want to say fascination with bears and their natural obsession with bears and their natural environment. He didn't physically interact with the bears, I believe. He didn't go and feed them. We'll get to, we'll get to that. So he'd watch them and he kind of, in a sense, form relationships with them where I see what you're saying now because it's just come to me on part of the documentary. You see him kind of approaching a bear and talking to it in kind of a what's the word but if you know somebody or something like if I approach you and talk, I would because I know you already. It would be kind of a relationship in a relationship in like a bond kind of way because you already know that person, and then the bear would rear up and you kind of back away. So this went on for a number of years where he was going out into the outback. 13 years. You see, I didn't know. I'm speaking as a guy who's watched it once, who's in a sense one of you, the viewers who perhaps haven't seen it or have heard of it. So for 13 summers, he would go out, he'd camp out, he'd interact with the bears, he would film them, we'd talk about them, and that became his obsession and his purpose. This went on for a number of years, and he gained a little bit of notoriety in local press. Talking about this guy who would go out and interact with bears, and they nicknamed him the Grizzly Man. So an interesting fact about Timothy Treadwell is apparently he was also going to be an actor. He was shortlisted for a starring role in the series Cheers, the American series Cheers, set in the bar, and he was actually shortlisted for Woody Harrelson's part. And legend has it that Woody Harrelson got the part instead. And I think that kind of had thrown, if I'm not mistaken, Timothy Treadwell off his game, and perhaps he needed to find a new purpose, and this became that. He and his girlfriend, Amy Hunard, I hope I pronounced that right, were tragically killed and almost fully were killed and eaten by a grizzly bear on October 2003. Timothy spent 13 summers in Katmai National Park in Alaska, also known as the Grizzly Maze, and I assume that's called the Grizzly Maze because there's such a high content of bears there. When you watch this, I mean, we're talking about a gentleman who's no longer with us, so we're not going to badmouth, but he was, quite. I'm saying this because he speaks about this on himself on camera. That he was quite, he blonde hair and blue eyes. He was quite effeminate, and he talks about his love for women, and he talks a little bit about, I think he talks a little bit about wanting to be an actor, but so when you're watching this, you could look at this and you could think. Yeah, you could perhaps ridicule why was he going out with the bears, why this and that. But in actual fact, we have a lot of respect for this guy because he was basically putting something that he was passionate about and, filming it, talking about it. He's obviously for the conservation of the bears, for caring for the bears. But the thing is, I mean, in hindsight, when, the experts, some animal experts, I don't know the correct name for somebody who studies bears, were saying that with the bears, it's like a cat. You can have a house cat and it's fine and you stroke it and nothing's wrong, and then it turns around and scratches you and bites you. But because it's a house cat and it only weighs, 5-6 pounds or 7 pounds, it doesn't really do you much damage, although cats can. Whereas with a bear, all it needs is a bad day and it's a bit hungry and it turns around and attacks you. When you've got, a 2-ton 12-foot bear almost. I think grizzlies are the second largest bears in the animal kingdom behind the polar bears, and that has a go at you.
Is it actually the brown bears as well?
The brown bears, yeah, there's not a lot you can do about it. And what one of the experts has said, if my memory is correct, that when he went back to camp and he with his girlfriend, as I said, they were both tragically killed. It was at a time when the bears were actually at their hungriest because they hadn't their food supply was kind of quite sparse. And one of the foods, I think, was it trout that they would actually pick them out of the water and eat them. Trout and salmon. So when he went to interact with the bears and they were starving, and there was one particular bear that was known for having this kind of personality. Because here's the other thing we talked about just quickly: the Faroe Islands. We talked about Devil's Teeth. Remember, I did a book review on that, Devil's Teeth. I think we did a book review on that. And even the shark experts, they talked about how the individual sharks would have their own personalities. They weren't just mindless killing machines, And one of the sharks, I think I'd said this. I had said this on on the show, the I'm struggling for words. No, the chaps themselves, I was trying to think of the technical term for them, but what they basically said is the shark was kind of almost maternal. This great big 21 foot sister female shark was actually quite maternal. It would follow the boat, it would watch you. So they can have different personalities. It was a tragedy that on that particular day they'd come against a bear that was known for its kind of aggressive temperament. It was hungry and it attacked and it killed them. But the point we're trying to make is that the chap was following some kind of purpose he had for himself, and as I say, it's documented in this film. The Grizzly Man. Also see the Grizzly Man soundtrack, which features Bruce Springsteen and the great guitarist Richard Thompson. So as I say, it's interesting having a look. I've just given you a very brief synopsis and a brief kind of segment of what I can remember about the documentary. It also reviews some of the people that knew his parents, I believe, are interviewed. I think an ex-girlfriend's interviewed, and it also talks to one of the pilots and one of the kind of I think he's a ranger or certainly a pilot that kind of frequents the national park. So
I think he used to bring his rations across as well.
Yes, he did. Thank you. And that's when he sung that song, the doggies are here and doggies no longer here, Treadwell's no longer here. So we definitely recommend it. It's going to go down on a recommendation. We're not going to give it an out of 10 because it doesn't require a score. I think you'd agree, Cliff. It's something that's it's art. So it's something that's it's art and it's informative. So it's something that's worth checking out. The Grizzly Man by Werner Herzog. So we recommend that you look at that. So we're coming towards the end. So thank you for staying with us. We had a few technical hitches.
Can anyone guess the competition?
Oh, has anybody got the competition? Because we're going to be wrapping up. You need to let us know in the next few minutes if you want to win that T-shirt. If not, we'll have to carry it through to the next one. So I just want to say, if you want to email us, you can email us at contact@peepmagazine.co.uk. Please subscribe. Please press that notification button. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us obviously on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram. You can find myself on Twitter at WatlingHot. You can find me on Instagram at TeamAlpha1424. Please, if you are within the vicinity, 100-mile vicinity of Alnwick, get yourself to the Elite Super Gym. The Elite Super Gym, we'll have the graphic for that on the next show, which we're going to have that. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to put up, but Elite Super Gym in Alnwick. Follow them on Facebook at Elite Fitness Super Gym on Facebook. Elite Fitness Super Gym on Instagram. Follow. If you have any interest in any kind of training, if you're into the martial arts, into yoga, into any kind of, gym work, resistance-based work, strength and conditioning, which I think I've already said, outdoor training, we've got it all there at Alnwick. It's where Team Alpha are based, so please follow and get in touch. The next episode in 2 weeks' time, we will have an episode soon. That may be a little... we're not going to jump the gun, but we'll have the next episode be coming to you in the next within the next few weeks. Certainly, we'll put a date together and we'll announce that. We'll announce the date within the next 2 weeks for definite. We're hoping to get Chris Reed on. So what's the date now? Is it May? Are we in May? So we'll be coming to you again in June. So we'll set a date for June. Likely a Friday night, likely a 6 o'clock start. But we'll certainly let you know in the next 2 weeks when that's going to be. We'll set a date for the next show. It will be. We're into double figures. 10. We're on 10. It'll be episode 10 next. It'll be episode 10. We're gonna keep throwing this out. We may have Chris Reed on as a guest. We're gonna have the Fit Hut. We're gonna have Fit Hut represented either as a guest or as a call-in. We'll be visiting Spennymoor Sports as well. And I should announce quickly, Cliff, which I hadn't mentioned to Cliff. So we do try and get these shows to you within every 2 to 4 weeks, basically, depending on when we can all get together and get this out to you. But we have other things to bring to you as well. So, we'd like to do these shows every night, wouldn't we?
Yes.
So if we've got any supporters out there who would like to drop in, I don't know, maybe 10 grand a month or something, we could live on that, couldn't we? And then we're just going to bring you content. We are going to go to Tyne Cinema, but here's the thing. Tyne Mouth Cinema, we're gonna go there. We're gonna go all over for you. We're gonna show you. We're gonna bring everything to you, so you don't even have to. Well, you don't have to leave your room, but hopefully you will. Come get off the phone sometimes and. But here's leave them. Here's the next syntax for you. We're going to be speaking to the good people at Tyne Mouth Outdoor Pool, trying to resurrect the old outdoor swimming pool at Tyne Mouth. We have the green light to speak with them. So we're going to be doing a little interview there on the next outdoor Peep XS or Peep on the Move.
Can I just say,
yep, go for it.
On the syntax playlist
at
the moment, there's actually a couple more things.
Yes, I noticed that.
There's an interview with an A-list bodyguard.
A-list bodyguard.
There's an interview with an ex-military Marine who used to play for the Queen.
Right, we have a Marine down there as well, a Royal Marine.
And I think that's it. There's two, and then there's obviously the bottle books.
Yeah. So have a look on Peep syntax on Peep. So so those two excellent new productions that we've brought to you. So we're going to have the supporting Tyne Mouth Pool, which was Tyne Mouth. Laurel and Hardy were there. If you remember Tyne Mouth, and it was a big play. It was a big venue, Whitley Bay, to go to. The dance hall and everything. It kind of fell into disarray, and certainly the pool it's no longer used. But the Tyne Mouth Pool charity are looking to actually resurrect that and bring it back. And there's some great artist impressions. So we're going to be going to their base, doing some filming and interviews inside, and we're going down to Tyne Mouth. I've finally become a Jid. Oh no. Well, no, it's a bad thing. It's a great thing. Well, it's a great thing because we're coming to you from the centre of Newcastle, though. But long may my non kind of recognisable accent continue. And we're going to be speaking. My point was, we're also going to be speaking to the good people at Long Sands Surf School. Run by a lovely gentleman called Barry. I'm going to be there tomorrow. I'm surfing tomorrow morning, actually. So we're going to talk a little bit about Barry, about his business, Long Sands, a bit about the sport of surfing, the history of surfing. You might get a little bit of me in the water surfing away, probably wearing a wetsuit, unfortunately, because it is quite cold in the North Sea. But you never know if it's a nice day. I'm trying to get Cliff to bring this camera down onto the beach and into the water, but he seems hesitant for some reason. So we may even get some footage on an iPod.
Well, the thing is, I'm making a bit of an investment, so next episode, there might be another camera in the studio.
We might have another camera. So we're going to get down to the beach. We're going to get outside. So like I say, within the next 2 weeks, we won't have a show for you, but we'll be announcing the date of the next show. So that'll be imminent. So we're going to have another live studio. We're going to have the Fit Hut with us. We're going to have Chris Reed with us. We're going to have a phone in from my good friend Steve Ibbotson, Hellraiser, who's fighting soon, to talk to us a little bit about that. We'll maybe have a phone in from Baz Jones, or we'll run the show from, as I say, the back of his car on his way to work, so we can get him on, even inadvertently. We're going to be talking to the good people at the Tyne Mouth Outdoor Pool Charity and the Long Sands Surf Company with my good friend Barry. And that's it. So I was going to drop the mic, but I don't think Cliff will be too happy if I unclip it. Can I unclip it and drop the mic? So, guys, thank you for staying with us tonight. And I'm adamant that on the next show we are going to start bang on 6, because so we had to rebuild the studio tonight and just get a few things together. But we're going to be back on. We're going to be back on the next show. So thank you very much for joining us. This is myself and Mr. Cliff Sainsbury at the centre of Newcastle upon Tyne, thanking you for joining us on Peep. That's it. We out.